Hi, today we're going to look at why Blue, a fully distributed 100% digital accounting firm. And the name of this presentation is Office Not Required. And before we start, I'd love for you to add me on LinkedIn, Scott D. Hoppy. And what we're going to do during this presentation is go over my story of getting into distributed, um, models around accounting, models around distributed companies, and and I want to make sure as we go through this, we're getting hands-on with why Blue and some of the things that we've gotten out of this as lessons. But even if you're not looking to make your firm be fully distributed, I think sharing this approach, there's a lot of opportunities for traditional firms to fold in updates to their models. So let's hang in there, listen tight, and see what we discover together. So why Blue is a fully distributed firm. We have about 10 people reporting to me, with several of them in California, a couple in Chicago, and then our bookkeepers in North Carolina, and our the guy that helps me with a lot of technology. He's out in Utah and moves between there and Colorado. So when I got into accounting, I started off at Ernst and Young in audit as an intern, and I was in Palo Alto at that time, and I was like, as I was doing that, I was working on a big public companies, and I thought to myself, like, I really want to. I know I want to start my own practice, and I didn't see that happening if I was in audit, and I didn't see that happening by focusing my expertise on public companies. So I switched from Palo Alto to where I wanted to live, San Francisco, and that's where Why Blue's based out of, and where I've been working since. And so I switched from audit to tax, and I switched from public companies to private client services. So I worked on private companies, high net worth individuals, and the like at PwC. Um, and I thought that would help gear me towards starting my own practice. But I'm a super curious person, so I also started thinking about, well, I kind of like this. I'd like to get my doctorate, and I'd like to teach down the line. Um, and I thought if I have my own practice, it lends itself to teaching. So when I decided to go for my doctorate, I had to make a decision between going back full time and going back part time, and I really value having a hands-on experience and getting real life experience into the classroom as well as into my research. So I thought the best fit for me would be going to Golden Gate University for my doctorate. And at that time, I also switched from PwC to Gensler, which is a global architecture firm. And what was really attractive about them at the outset was a 40-hour capped week. And coming from Big Four busy seasons, that sounded pretty nice. But it also served the purpose of helping me have time for my doctorate. But once I just got into the doctorate, I got super curious around accounting for models, stress in public accounting, and and that focused me in on uh, people within public accounting. And and as I got really curious around that, um, something else kind of simultaneously happened, and that's my wife Charlotte. Her grandpa actually got sick and had a little bit of had uncertain health, and we weren't sure if we would have to go back to England. So she's from London, and we didn't know if we would have to go back for a little bit, and I didn't know I had the flexibility to do that. So I went over to my manager at Gensler, and I said, hey, this is going on. Um, my wife, her grandpa is really sick, and she was raised by her grandparents. He's the guy that I asked for her hand in marriage to. and he's ill. So if we need to go back, can I work out of our London office? And mind you, Gensler, San Francisco is a big office. LA is a really sophisticated office, and so was, as far as foreign offices go, London was the most sophisticated one we had. So I thought, hey, this is no problem, man. And he goes, okay, well, let me think about it, and comes back a little later on and says, I really need someone to be here with me. And that's got me thinking about wow, if I'm productive and I'm doing my work, who cares if I'm sitting here with you, behind you, really? And we're in an open office plan. I'm sitting behind you, like I could be doing anything there versus sitting in London and still delivering to you, still communicating, still doing everything. So I put in my 2 week notice because I wanted to. My family comes first, and I wanted to have the flexibility to go back to London. I wanted to be there for my wife's family, and I didn't. And there was no job that's going to be more important than that for me. Um, but it also turned into a good time to turn around, and I remember meeting up with Charlotte. She worked at PwC too, and she was still there at that time. So we met, and I was like, hey, look, what do you say? What do you say I do this? And I open up a firm, and she was behind me. She's amazing. So she was behind me, and we went ahead and said, yeah, let's do it. So we decided to go forward with that, and it started making me think, uh, how can I create this accounting firm to not run into the issues that I just ran into um, with my manager, where it's like you have to be there. I don't want to be bound by an office, and that kind of got me down the line of like, well, virtual office, remote accounting firm, and none of that language really jived with me. But then I came across this vocabulary of distributed companies, and once I had that keyword, that really opened the floodgates up for me. So let's take a peek at that. And since we may not all be familiar with it, I certainly wasn't familiar with this term until I really dove into it. Um, a distributed company has no headquarters. Employees work where they're most productive, and communication is moved outside the boundaries of a physical location. And I think the two most important aspects of that is the first one, or the first one, the the second sentence is the first of importance, where it's employees work where they're most productive. And the great part about this is when you're working from the space that you're most productive, maybe it's your home office, everything's dialed in exactly how you want. You can have the monitors you want, the setup you want, the standing desk, the sitting desk. It can be cluttered, it can be clean. You can have the temperature however you want it. There's no trying to make the office one temperature works for everyone. If you like 73, make it 73 all the time. And so there's some lessons there to learn about, to take away around, well, maybe maybe own personal preference. And then the other one that's incredibly important is the communications moved outside the boundaries of a physical location, and that's the spot where, whether you're a sole practitioner in accounting, you have several offices where you're co-located. Maybe you have an office and some people are remote, most aren't, or you're me where you're fully distributed. Moving communication beyond the boundaries of a physical location or helps improve everyone's communication, and it helps bring all those stakeholders together, um, so they're on an even playing field, and that in turn helps them show up as the best they can be. So taking this distributed company model, I was like, okay, I can get there. Who's doing it, right? That's the question you want to know. Who's doing it? And there's several companies that I like to pay attention to. Um, Automatic is the parent company to WordPress, and WordPress powers 34% of the internet. they're probably just shy of 1,000 employees. I love paying attention to them. They have great content that they share. Very very open about their model and successes and how they do it, and so a lot of lessons there. But what I really found fascinating about their founder Matt is when he was like a 10-person company, people went, hey, when you're 100, it'll never work. They're a 100-person company. They're like, oh yeah, when you're 300, it'll never work. And they're 300. Now they're now they're over 900, and it's still working. Is the point? A second one of my favorite companies is Zapier. They're about 250 employees, all distributed, and I love their tool. Zapier is for automation, and they have their lingo is like, Zapier makes you happier. Um, I've seen their founder speak in San Francisco a few times, and I would say, I've listening to them and looking out for their presentations. Like I learned a lot from Automatic's founder Matt and Zapier's founder. I also use and love Buffer, which is a social media management tool, and they have about 100 employees. At Buffer, you can schedule your LinkedIn post. That's what I use it for, and they have a high level of transparency. Um, I, I love their values that they share and what they do for their people. So big influencers to me. Basecamp is a project management tool. I don't use it, but I love that these guys think differently and they write some of the books in the remote world. I like that they're getting the word out there. I don't always agree with their language, but they make me think differently. And they're about 100 employees. And then in the tax world, there's a company called TaxJar. They do sales tax compliance for those that are, in the Avalara area and realm of things. You can get a distributed version of that. Okay, let's look over and then at why Blue more specifically. We're just over 5 years now of being live, so since 2014, and now we're in November of 2019 during this presentation. During the very beginning, it was just me, so all I was focused on 100% was client experience. After client experience, I started thinking about, well, how do I take these tools and go beyond me? I didn't want the information locked up with me. I needed so everyone was on an even playing field no matter where they were. Um, and and as I was picking those tools up, I had some more criteria around them, but we'll swing back around to that. And then kind of going forward out of that, so more like year three and on, it's all been about iterating and culture around the tools. Um, So look at the just me and the client experience. I wanted to go where my clients were when it came to document uploads. I wasn't interested in accounting portals. Like they're a little bit classical to me. But also during year one is a time when I subcontracted with a very small firm, and that was a good experience because prior to that, my exposure was Ernst and Young. It was PwC, and I was seeing how the big players were doing it. But when I worked at a small firm, um, I think the guy had his own book, and then he bought another practice as well. So he had contractors come in seasonally, and I just saw I think it was enlightening to see how sole practitioners are doing. I was like, this one, and my takeaway was like, this would not be the life for me. Um, take documents however they come, have paper documents everywhere. People just drop files off. I was like, well, if I don't want to be bound by an office, I sure as heck can't get people dropping files off physically. That's not going to flow, and it's going to break my goal of not needing to be bound by the office. So I built the firm right off the bat off of Google. So I use G Suite. Most pretty much 100% it felt like of the tech companies that were distributed companies were all on G Suite, and I said, hey, I'm going to go all in there. Um, I love that too because I personally was on Google Drive, and every single person I knew was already on Google Drive. So when it came to getting files and document drop off, my clients already knew how to use the tool I was giving to them. I didn't have to have them set up a new login. It was super easy and it was intuitive. The user experience was already great, and I didn't even have to develop it, which was even better. So I spent my time in the beginning focused on that interaction that they had with me, making it simple for them to upload. Uh, and I think in the first year I asked like, hey, I did surveys at the end like, are the tools easy to use? And people said yes. And the second year I'm like, are the tools easy to use? And someone had a comment like, look, if you can't use these tools, you got to be brain dead. I stopped asking the question. I'm like, okay, the client facing side's great, but once you had G Suite as your platform, and starting to think about going beyond me, I could consider tools that played friendly with Google. So like Asana, I picked for project management, but I tested a bunch of others. When I picked Asana, I thought, hey, it looks good. I can structure it to be effective for what we're trying to do. Asana was beautiful because it was a blank slate, which meant I could make it whatever I wanted, but it was so challenging to make it whatever I wanted because you had to be the architect and the designer to paint your picture. But you had this blank canvas. So what got me really in there and what I liked about it was you I could require people to log in to Asana not with a separate email and password, but using their Google login. And from a provisioning standpoint, I love that, and from a security standpoint, I love that because in the G Suite, I can really dial in and say like, hey, I need the password to be super complex. I can require two-factor authentication. I could do all this stuff, and now I didn't have to worry about Asana's password being weak or them not having two-factor or all this other stuff. I could just monitor one spot, and I knew it was secure jumping over to the other one. So that's what got me really going into that, but more importantly was I was looking at, well, I don't want just something that's good for today. I was looking for something that could scale out into the future. And and I felt like picking these tools and not picking accounting specific tools, I was able to pick the best tools. And that has paid dividends since because they're always improving their user experience. They have many, many more customers in many different fields, so they can consider way more than just accounting things. And and I benefit with better integrations. They've started introducing like automation and all this other fun stuff inside of it. And I didn't like that's beyond my subscription. I didn't have to pay a dime. Um, so that's been really awesome to see develop, but it was also a huge time suck to be like, what tools? There's so many tools available. Which ones am I going to pick? Which ones play nice together? Um, and it just happens to be because I picked G Suite from the get go, and I picked things that played nice with it. Um, that I happen to pick a bunch of cloud platforms, and everything has APIs, so they can all actually link up, and you can customize the whole thing, which that blew my mind, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Um, but this going forward, kind of year three and on, and what we've been doing for the last 2, 3 years, and where I don't see it stopping is iterating, and that's building the culture around it. So as you go from like me to a contractor, me to two contractors, to me the four full time, and all that, it's how you're using the tools evolves, the communication style evolves, the team norms evolve, and that's exciting. And it means that things aren't static, but it also means like that not everything's like a standard operating procedure yet. Yeah. But let's start looking a little bit more shifting from like the those first two items of like what we use and then that last one of how we use it, and let's switch gears over to what's going on in accounting and where's this fit in. So here's your standard accounting firm model, the pyramid model, right? Partner at top, associate at bottom. Um, that's fine, but what I care about is where it's transitioning to, and that's to the diamond model. And in the diamond model, what we're trying to do is bring in automation outsourcing to be more efficient at the be more to have a more efficient model in general, right? So if I had my way, that automation triangle, I think I would have like take up the whole half because I don't want I like that a diamond model sounds nice, right? Diamond, but I think for me, I want to see this automation support visually. I'd like to see it represented at all levels. So I want to see partner, manager, associate, everyone getting the benefits of automation, because I think if you focus your time there and you automate out all these other parts of the job, you really free up the person's mind to just focus on the challenging part. Maybe it's also focusing on the client relationship, making sure that's amazing, and having the automation support you in that, and your tools support you in that. Maybe it's taking down the administrative tasks that you have to do, so you're not spending an hour of your day cleaning things up or working on things that don't add value, but instead you either get that hour to refresh yourself, which is my preference, or you can spend that hour on really focused work. Um, but by being efficient in that model, you're not just putting people into the system to solve delegation, but you're introducing automation before delegation, and that's an important role. Um, and outsourcing now is very accessible for all firms, and it's something we do. And I thought by having, here's my assumption: I thought by having a distributed model, which lends itself incredibly well to automation, because everything plays nice together. I thought we would also be set up pretty well for outsourcing because our communication's already there, the background's there. Like I know if we bring in outsourcing and we bring in India, like we're not putting them at a disadvantage because they have all the information I have, but it hasn't been that easy, right? Maybe we don't have the same challenges as other firms, but it's not perfect for us. Let's take a look at this automation piece, because what happened with me was I hit a point where Google Drive was going great. I'm like, client experience is there. That's perfect. But client experience or employee experience, really, or in this case, it was my experience because it was just me. It started becoming challenging because of the upload folders that I was using for a client. I had no way of getting a notification that they uploaded anything. And my fear was that they would drop something off with the expectation thing like, oh, Scott knows if he got it, he's going to process it and do whatever he's got to do. But instead, like, I wouldn't know. And when you had 30 clients, that's not an issue to check upload folders every once in a while. When it became 60, it already felt painful and challenging. And so when you think about scaling beyond that, I was like, well, that's not going to work for me. So the first thing that I did was I wrote a script. So I wrote a code that monitored the upload folder for the client, and then if the client got uploaded a file, it sent a message to the client's Slack channel saying, "Hey, they uploaded something." And that simple piece of coding was so relieving. And I think what it really did though for me was um, it showed me that I could literally automate anything in my business at all. Like I felt like the world was my oyster at that point. So what I did was to solve this problem of the folder in the cloud sitting there in Drive, and me not knowing if something was there. I found this company, and it was a tech company, and they were using Slack to take lunch orders. But what they did was they sent a message out to everyone. They responded, and as they responded, it sent a message. It dropped a line into a Google Sheet, and Google Sheet is like Google's Excel. So it dropped a line into the sheet, and then when that happened, the person responsible for the lunch order got a message back into Slack saying like, "Hey, lunch orders are all in. These are the people that are missing it, or like all the lunch orders are here. Like you're set to order and do what you got to do." So what I did was I took that element where if you add a line to a Google Sheet, send a message to Slack. I did that to send a notification to Google Drive, to Slack, saying Google Drive got an upload folder. And then I wrote another piece of code that um, looked at the folder, and when someone dropped something off, added a line to the Google Sheet. So when I married those two pieces of code together, I was able to solve my biggest pain point at that point in time, which was getting a notification in Slack for a Google Drive upload. This is what it looks like. It's not anything fancy, but this is pretty much what it's looked like the whole entire time since we wrote it a few years ago. Um, Mind you, when I wrote this, like I think I spent 10 hours on my couch on like my Memorial Day break, and I just got so sucked in. I was like so focused, and I was so excited when I got this to work. I was like, we're done. Everything's gonna be easy now. And what did I like? In reality, what I figured out was like this was just the tip of the iceberg. This is what it got me hooked, realizing Google has this thing called Scripts built into it, and Scripts allows you to connect the dots between any and every program out there. Wow. Oh, wow. So what I did with where I built off on that was it's like, it's great that the upload thing gives me a notification. It does that. But on the client side of it, so the front stage, um, they drop something off, the file moves out of the upload folder, but do they know if I got it, or is it just gone? So we added in another step that if people drop a bunch of files off, it drafts an email in my inbox too that says like, "Hey Sam, thanks for uploading your files to your upload folder. Here they are listed for your records." And all we do in that end is like we go to the draft folder, we get the message in Slack, we do all that, and then we go to the draft folder and we just shoot off that message to confirm with the client, and that closes the feedback loop, right? They drop something off, we get a notification in Slack, we notify them, everyone's on the same page, feedback loop closed, perfect. That was the beginning, but more recently was this last year. What we reworked a whole entire flow around engagement letters and invoices, and that was that this was the best thing that we did so far, and it was taking what took 4 people 4 weeks to complete all of our engagement letters, sending them, getting all of our invoices out. I reduced it down to one person, me, one day, one click. So 4 people 4 weeks to one person one day. And we wrote a script to accomplish that, where it pulled all the information together, create custom attachments for engagement letters, got them in DocuSign, and from DocuSign we automatically made QBO invoices that could get sent to the client, and everything got streamlined. And that at that point I was like, oh my god, right? All you have to do is like you can rethink all your processes, and you can automate all this stuff out, and you can reduce so much of your internal friction if you just think about it and you rework it a little bit and you introduce this automation. So what we do is we use something called I use a framework called ODAD, OD80, and that represents optimization, deletion, automation, delegation. And it goes in that order how you do it. So optimization in ODAD. That's that's writing out all the steps in the process, and then rewording it and creating a clear language. Maybe you're optimizing the flow of it, so it's as logical as it can be in its current state. It's as easy to read. It can span levels. Anyone can come in and do it. Um, Even language barriers. So like optimization, you're focusing there. Okay, everything's all cleaned up. You feel good about that. You have a great product. Next, you go to deletion. It's the first D of ODAD. And in deletion, you go through all those steps and you say, what's unnecessary? Deletion is the most important step, by the way. You go, what's unnecessary? Cut it out. And oftentimes, after you list everything out, you see obvious things that you can start snipping and removing. And once you get done with deletion, then you review that list that's left, and you go, okay, out of everything that's here, what can I automate? And you go and you automate all those. And then when you get through everything, the only lines that are left, the only steps that are left are human steps. Those are the ones you delegate. And by getting to delegation last, it makes it so you don't waste anyone else's time, which means you don't have to waste your hard-earned money paying them to work extra on a process. So ODAD and delegations at the end. You don't waste their time and you don't waste your hard-earned cash. That summarizes it. But let's sure, that's great. We got into the automation thing, but let's step back and let's just take a peek then at this distributed model and some of the lessons that are there. The most important thing to the distributed model is and I love it. I love this one. Communication is oxygen, and it comes from Automatic's creed. So their values, and in a remote firm, there's nothing more imperfect, more essential than communication. And I love that you're using communication as oxygen. You can't live without oxygen. You can't breathe without oxygen. We need communication in the distributed world. So understanding that at the highest level of importance, then you get into, well, where do we default between the remote and the remote world versus the traditional office world, and then what types of communication are there? Because then you can start working with that model and thinking about your own firm and how you're setting yourself up for success. So let's look at communication, the default styles for communication. In the office, it's a high communication environment, high distraction. In the remote world, it's a very low distraction environment, but low communication. So your goal and our goal is to move whatever side you're at, whatever your default is, you want to move the other way. So if you're in the office with high communication, high distraction, you want to reduce the level of distractions. In the remote world, I'm trying to increase the communication, and you do that through culture. You do that through norms. You can do that through expectations as well. We communicate a lot and have a lot going on Slack. That's kind of like our news feed for clients in the firm. So we get RSS feeds in that say, here's the AICPA tax updates. We get podcast notifications that Spadell put out a new California minute. And that's all just fed to us, as well as for our clients when they upload files, when we have all their information in to prepare the return, when their return's filed, when we have comments on their project, that just goes right into the feed. So we moved the communication level up for us, and we don't have to battle with distractions. That's pretty easy to keep low. But now let's look at the 3 speeds of communication. So you have real-time communication, that's called synchronous communication, asynchronous communication, and then you have storage. So real-time for us, that's happening on Slack, which the background of this, that's Slack's logo. And in Slack, we're going from text to video calls very fast. So you can see us jumping right over from maybe like discussing a hard topic and back, okay, well, hey, we're going back and forth a lot. Let's just jump over to this video, hash it out, and report back to Slack so everyone knows. Asynchronous communication happens in 2 ways for us. That's the tool's Asana that we use. That's our project management tool. And that's where our comments around a task or a project, it lives through the life of the project. And the other part of the asynchronous that that we have that's the secret sauce is our screen recording. And I'll come back around to that, an example of how we do that. But storage is our file management. That's Drive. So that's where our work papers are, our PDF work papers, everything that's like the permanent file, the things we want for our clients to be forever documented is there. But how these kind of work together for us is on that like asynchronous side. We're not perfect at this, but we've had great feedback when we do it. And how we use asynchronous really effectively is let's think about a tax return, and the reviewer finishes up the review. They have all their comments and points for the preparer to clear. That's all sitting inside of the storage end. And what they do is they then look at their points. They record their video. They record a video, like 5 minutes usually, going over the points that they have. 5 to 10 minutes, never more than 10 minutes. That's like best practice. So they make this 5 minute video for the preparer and saying like, hey, here's my comments. They add a little context to it because you have inflection, you have voice, you can you get that extra something from having that higher level of communication and voice. You go over the points, and then when they're all done, they'll post to Asana saying like, hey, reviewer, blah blah blah, done. Hey, prepare, clear my points in the work papers. Here's a video going over them. Have it done in the next couple days, whatever that may be. And then the preparer can pick it up when they're ready to pick it up. So that may not sound like much, but what it means is we just cut out that normal flow where, like when I was at PwC, it would be like, the reviewer finishes their notes, then they go back to the preparer and say, hey, you want to go over the notes? Come over now. And you have to get up from your desk, you have to go over there, you sync up, and you do this one-to-one, and you go over the points, and that's great. But what happens if I was completely in my flow on another project, and I had to get distracted and get up and walk away to go over points over something that I could have easily watched a video for at my convenience? Well, the preparers and the reviewers have loved this, because everyone's able to be in their own focus zone. They don't have to interrupt each other from it, but they can give all the context and all the information that they want to give whenever they want to give it. And that's been a huge win, and a nice way of replicating that one-to-one, but allowing the preparer to maybe pick it up the first thing the next day when their mind's the freshest again, and they have everything they need to get going. So now let's switch gears from the communication realm, and let's get into from the theory realm of accounting and distributed and automation and a diamond model, and let's go hands-on at Blu. I wanted to highlight, like, I try to remember when people first join the firm, like, well, what are those cultural things that are such norms for us but maybe new to you? And the first one is we have no internal emails. Email is meant for external communication only. In our case, it's for the client, not for us. For any of you that have to go into your inbox and sift through hundreds of emails, some internal, some external, some from the team, some from managers, some from preparers and staff, and some from clients, and you have to spend each day at least sorting the priority of each one. That's overwhelming. But making it so emails clearly only client stuff, one, it reduces the number of emails you have, but two, it also means what you're getting when you're in there. It's all client. The other thing that's really stands out to me is the level of transparency that we have. Part of having this cloud model and information not having physical boundaries is there's no information silos. So normally when an email ends up in someone's inbox, it's stuck there until it gets moved around or gets placed somewhere or communicated out. With us, we put all that client information, all the updates, all of our conversations, they're flowing through that Slack channel for the client. So if you're new to a project, you can go to that client Slack channel and you get a full download. You know exactly what happened. You know the issues we've been discussing. You know everything. Um, that's powerful. That's powerful. And we also have, this is probably the difference between like a good person and a high performer, or someone that's new to someone that is up to speed with us, and that's the mindset, and that mindset of automation, that ODAD mindset. And when you're in that mindset, you're asking the question how to do it, not who will do it. That's something you can take to your firms, no matter who you are. If you're asking that the question, you have your team asking how to do it. That's automatically a process question. You can diagnose that, you can automate it, you can improve it. When you ask who will do it, you're just trying to put a body in the seat to solve whatever you're trying to solve. And that may not be the most efficient way, or maybe what you get to anyways. Um, all right, let's take that one and let's move over to I got some of the teams comment. I was like, hey, I've been at this for a while. What am I forgetting? You're all much closer to the normal model than I am at this point. What have you noticed since you've been here? And the first one was like, hey, I get way more focused time for work. You're not sitting at your desk or your office and someone's just like knock knock and barging in, and that's an automatic disruption. Also, because of that focus time, they have a higher level of work-life balance, and they're not sacrificing productivity for it. And another person, and I think this is something I hear that's really, it's common among distributed companies. Your self-awareness tends to be higher because it tends to not be so much a butts in seat type of environment, but it's a results oriented environment. And think crack show pretty fast, and you're also on your own, so you have to have there's a lot of self-awareness to anything that's inhibiting your own growth, or anything that's slowing you down, or any development you need to have. No one's going to hold your hand through to get you there. They may like share a comment with you, but it's on you to get through and find that growth, and also find a team member to work with it on, or do it yourself. So for this person, they actually had something interesting where they felt a little stuck in the mud over the summer, and they're like, they were taking a little longer on the projects, and you're just like, hey, it looks like you're stuck in the mud. And he's like, yeah, I feel that way. And we talk, we work, and he's like, and worked on it, and in the end, he actually I liked it because he experimented, and that's great. He experimented with things that worked and didn't work for him. And what he found out was, and I love this, just put your shoes on. He put his shoes on, and that every day in the morning, even when he's sitting at home at his desk, and that was enough for him to be like, oh, you know, I'm at work. I loved it. Let's take a look at our tech stack then too. So we have G Suite. We've talked about Slack, our real-time communication, Asana for project management. We do all of our engagement letters and tax return signing through DocuSign. We use Lastpass for password management. QBO, Xero, Gusto for accounting and payroll. Gusto fits our image really well. Xero does fit our image as well too, and I was initially like way behind it, but I think I've now shifted more to QBO, and I like it for running my own firm because of the ACH debit invoicing. Screencastify is the screen recorder we use. That's a Chrome add-on. Paperspace is our virtual Windows machines. So we all run Chromebooks, super secure. Love them for that. Easy to provision. But tax software, PDF editing for Adobe still need a Windows computer. So if someone out there is going to make a cloud-based tax software that's really good, raise my hand. I'd love to. If you're not making it, I'd love to make it. If you'll fund me, or if you are making it, I'd love to be part of it. On the flip side, Adobe, the PDF replication, I haven't found that as a good drive add-on. There are a couple out there, but each one has a weakness that I'm not willing to sacrifice. But then in orange are the two bottom squares to our diamond model. Zapier and Google Scripts are part of our um, I would say are part of our secret sauce. Google Scripts is like the secret of the secret. It it unlocks everything, and Zapier is an amazing tool for that as well for automation. And then outsourcing, we use Entigrity. Um, it's not perfect, but we're learning. And Gruntworx. To me, I right now out of the gate, I'm like, well, Gruntworx does a lot. It brings a lot of stuff in, and it does the PDF bookmarking. And I would say like Integrity is like Gruntworx plus plus, so it's a little better, but not quite there. I haven't quite replaced that US based tax associate, but I'm working on it. So let's actually dive in and look at a couple of the things I love about the tools. One, Google Sheets, unlimited version history. If I'm at like way deep into the review and I want to go see what people did at each level, or if I'm like, this doesn't look right, I can restore a version if something gets messed up at any point. I can go back in time and see how things were before someone changed something. So I can catch all these different levels and it color codes it. So it's remarkable. It's so easy. But something that's actually newer that I also love in that same vein, you can right click any cell and see the version or edit history of that specific cell. That is so awesome. Again, for that review, if you're like, you don't have to want to look through a whole version history and do all that stuff and see the color coded, just right click the sucker. That's been wonderful. Email analytics. This is great for that customer experience and monitoring it. I know my emails for customers. So I get this report from Email Meter every month automatically. Shows me my average response time, and so I can come up with my own goals for that. I can see the number of messages received. So you can see my response time in October was down. My messages received were also down, which probably explains that. Nearly in half. I almost cut in half. How many senders there were. You can see my internal versus external pie charts there. You notice pretty much nothing sent internally. The ones that are marked, I would say internal. I'm using like air quotes right now, whether you can see it or not, is because like I'm copying someone, or maybe they're getting BCC on the team because we're going out to the client. But there's none of the team-to-team communications happening there. That's all in Slack. And then you can see on the busiest hour spot, you can see that's awesome too. I'm like, well, when do I get the most emails? And what day of the week? Because for me, I can start planning I can plan to not be overwhelmed by email. Maybe we only need to check it 2 times a week, and we can process everything then. Because it's really easy to be in your email 100% of the time. And we've shifted that around. So sometimes we do like Monday, Wednesdays, or we'll do Tuesday, Thursdays. Normally, we usually pick it up on Mondays and Fridays for sure, and then during the week we figure out our flow. That way we always hit a decent response time, but we're not living inside the inbox, waiting for things to show up. At some point, you got to do the real work, right? And then here's a couple pictures of our home offices. Some differences. So in the middle is me, that's mine, and I use a webcam that's off center, and I like that because I also put my Google Meet up there off center, and it means I'm kind of staring at the camera when I'm looking at the team. It doesn't look like my eyes are drifting off or I'm looking in some other space. I'm paying attention to them. And then I'll surround myself with other windows. Usually it's email below that as I'm like typing call notes. On the bottom left, the person has dual monitors that are curved screens. And on the right, this guy has a 34-inch widescreen set up normal, and then a 24-inch widescreen vertical. And he just preferred that, so we got him set up that way. If you go to youtube.com and you search Why Blue, you can find a lot more from me. I have videos that are there about onboarding and Asana and automation and all the fun stuff I've learned about. And then, most importantly, add me on LinkedIn. I want to connect with you. So right now, if you haven't done it in the very beginning, go there and add me on LinkedIn. But otherwise, if you want to know where I think the future of accounting is going, I think there's a big opportunity in project management to introduce a CRM that is not so transactional based, but is beyond the transaction. Because like when I look at accounting, I look at how I work with my clients, they're not a number to me. They're not just like a transaction, you build a relationship with them. Sometimes they turn into good friends. It's deeper than that. So I think there could be a lot done in the CRM realm to support that relationship. And I think there could be a lot of client information and background that's aligned with that relationship that could be brought up as information to the team in the project management realm. Like, did they have a baby in the year? That would be reflected on the tax return. Did they move? The address would be reflected on the tax return. Were they talking about opening an account somewhere? Were they talking about a DAP? You could capture all that and create a client timeline, and like top information about them. So if you're this person, maybe you're a preparer, so you're not as involved in those client communications. You can look at this client history in one nice visual spot and see like when they had kids and when this happened and when that happened, when they sold their house, when they bought a house. So as you look back at tax returns like 2015 and on to today, you can see the reflection of those life events in their return and have more context to those changes. Not have to just see the return and be like, oh, there's a new dependent there. They must have had a kid, which is a fine way of doing it, but I don't think that makes it as the easiest way to do it. Anyways, I have lots of thoughts about the future, and thanks for listening. I bet you got something out of this. I really hope you did. Really, though, if you have a question and you want to dive in together about that, please email me, message me on LinkedIn, anything, and I'd love to connect and chat more. All right, have yourself a great rest of your day. This is Scott, and I've had a fun time talking to you. Bye bye.